Christians. Welcome to another program, Eagle and Condor, here in San Francisco at BAVC Media. And tonight we'll be trying to give you an international scope of the Indian movement, if you will. Indians from all regions of Mother Earth are on the move, and many have now begun to annually gather at the United Nations, that is in New York City, and primarily to attend the annual permanent forum on Indigenous issues. And this session that just completed was the 22nd, and it began April the 14th through the 27th. And there were over the 28th, Friday the 28th, that is. And there were over 2,500 Indian peoples from all over the world that registered. This is a big movement, my relatives, and tonight we'll be talking especially to a young woman from the island of Taiwan, formerly known as Formosa. As many of you know the history there, Taiwan was invaded by the Chinese administration army of Chiang Kai-shek. Mao Zedong and the revolutionaries had successfully defeated Chiang Kai-shek and his peoples. And so the Chiang Kai-shek and his people went eastward toward the island Formosa. And there were Indian peoples, indigenous peoples that is, on the island, of which today registered at least 16 different tribal peoples. And I'll let our guest, Fen Mai Viet, explain further the history and the background. But to let you know that indeed Indian peoples are still there on the island, and Fen Mai will explain that very deliberately for you to understand that Indian peoples in the Asian area have now successfully become the most indigenous peoples representative at the United Nations, whereas I wanted to qualify that by saying that it was members of the American Indian movement, if you might recall or know about the International Indian Treaty Council, became the first indigenous organization recognized at the United Nations, and that was by the leadership, in part by the American Indian movement, which helped organize the first international Indigenous Peoples Conference, if you will, in Geneva, Switzerland, and that was in September 1977. That was the very first time that Indians of all the colors of Mother Earth that I mentioned, of the four directions, first time came together to lay out a plan for our self-determination and how to bring the youth about to understanding our history and continuing forward to reclaim our destiny as indigenous peoples of the world. And so with that, you'll hear from Fen Mai, as I said, the history there of Taiwan today. Also, I wanted to say that we were very successful, that is myself as a delegate, along with American Indian Movement West and other peoples that went to the United Nations for this permanent forum on indigenous issues. And we succeeded in introducing a statement, if you will, in support of freedom for Leonard Peltier. That was under the agenda item number 4, if you will. And also under agenda item 3, we also succeeded with a statement on the sacredness of water and meetings of global scale that are being planned to address that as a sacred item and not necessarily as a resource, as many in today's institutions refer to water. And so my relatives, with that, we have quite a show for you this week, and we hope to run this show perhaps twice a week here on BAVC. And tell your friends that they can also see it online. That's Eagle and the Condor, Sundays at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time at sfc.tv, or you can go to the AIM West website at aim-west.org. And also don't forget to tune in to KPFA in Berkeley, radio station, one of the Pacifica networks at 94.1 FM. Also live streaming at kpfa.org. And I also host a rotating program on Wednesdays, and that's Bay Native Circle, along with Janine Antoine, Eddie Madrill, and Morning Star Gali. So tune in to that on Wednesdays. And also don't forget La Onda Bajita radio lowrider show on Friday nights. They're at kpfa.org from 8 to 9 p.m. And along with that, there's a half-hour segment that I sometimes host on the second and the third Fridays, and it's called Across Indian Land. So that gives you a lot of outlets, my relatives, for you to stay tuned on Indigenous news. We try to bring you the latest, whether it's protecting sacred sites or reporting on the extractive oil and gas industry, or even on the mascot issue, my relatives. There's still a lot of countries, or rather a lot of counties across the country here in the United States, for example, that continue to have these racist indigenous people as mascots in their sports, primarily in high schools across the country. So we try to bring all that to you. And my relatives, more locally, or for your calendar in the immediate, we're just completing the 52nd annual powwow at Stanford. So if you missed it, perhaps next year, but it's a good time to come to these powwows. They're very public and welcoming to the communities to come and understand, engage with Indian people, buy Indian made products, authentic that is, listen to music, some dancing, and socialize and meet friends you haven't seen in a while. So that's the Stanford powwow. And more locally, my relatives here in the San Joaquin Valley, in the community of Fresno, in the Arte Americas building there on Van Ness, downtown Fresno, from May 12 through November 26, plenty of time. But you got to come and see Richard Montoya and his homage to his father, Jose Montoya, in Resident Valley. And these are taking you through memories of Don Jose Montoya and his achievements and contributions. So don't forget to check in on that. Also, real quickly, my relatives, again, locally, I want to advance the understanding of this newspaper, Tecolote, El Tecolote. Very reliable news locally. It's bilingual, and it's been in the Mission District for pretty near 50 years, my relatives. So try to pick one up here in the Mission District. And also in the Mission District, a big salute to artists, Latino, Chicano artists of the 60s, 70s, 80s period, and including the 90s and up to the present in the 2000s here, including with the Zapatistas and the EZLN, but also murals of the past that are available for you to see at the Mission Cultural Center there at Mission and 25th. They're at the corner, so check that out as well. All right, my relatives, that brings us up to the announcements and introduction. Welcome, my relatives, to another program here on Eagle and the Condor. And today, my relatives, I've invited BAVC Mai of Taiwan to talk to us about her peoples, and that is Indigenous peoples, the Indigenous peoples of the island of Taiwan, formerly Formosa. And my relatives, I believe that this is indeed a educational moment for many of us who perhaps were not even aware that there are indeed Indigenous peoples on this island in Taiwan. And just briefly, before I bring in our guest, BAVC Ben Mai, I'd like to say that the Chinese government, after the war, the Civil War, or Revolutionary War, that is, that went on in the mainland, the former administration, that is, of Chiang Kai-shek, had fled to the island of Taiwan. So I'd like to now invite BAVC Ben Mai to tell us her story. And just once again, to encapsulate her story as an Indigenous person, my relatives, as we say, worldwide, the effect on Indian peoples due to colonization, that we have identified the enemies of our peoples primarily in the form of institutions. And in this case, it would be religions are among our enemies in the sense that they impose their culture and beliefs upon our peoples. Also, the education that is not the accurate or appropriate or sensitive to the culture of our peoples, and of course, governments, the colonial settlers, if you will, that came onto the lands and continue with their administration. So with that, please, BAVC Ben Mai, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Oh.
It's my honor to know you so much. BAVC ne ho sa on go. Mi oi mi to fuengu ne Taiwan ho la unta America ho la utu me de mai ne eto ya chi pungum za ho ya hiwa. I'm saying that in my Zhou language that my name is Fan Mei BAVC Niahosa, and I'm from a small village called Lalauya in Taiwan. I am working with my people, which I'm very, very happy about it. So I work with lots of brave Indigenous people in UN, like you, leading us to go to a right way for Indigenous people. And in Taiwan, I will talk about a little bit of the history of Taiwan, a little bit, so people will know how the Taiwan, the history of Taiwan, how it evolved to these days. So, okay, so I attend UN since 2009, I think. It's been a long time, and I never really think about that. I never really think about people doesn't know Taiwan has indigenous people. Until I ask one person, they say, do you know I'm indigenous people? And that person in the UN asked me, you don't look like one. I said, how should I look like? I said, I'm from Taiwan. We have indigenous people in Taiwan. So after I attend UN, since that time, I continue to go to UN to attend these meetings to know what's the newest news, what's the relatives are facing, because we always we're facing almost the same thing, but probably the level is a little bit, some are hard or some are okay, but generally we all suffer from either ways. So I might attend this year if I get through and get all the funds, and I will assure that Taiwan has indigenous people. We have 16 tribes, which we call nation now. We used to have more than 16, but now we have 16 tribes that we officially recognized by the government as the language, as the culture. So it's nice in a way, but or relatives, there are things come with those things. So Taiwan, our tribe is in Taiwan, south of Taiwan, a little bit. It's mid-south of Taiwan, in the mountains. But they call us mountain people before, but we are from the coastline before Dutch came and Spanish came.
Primarily on the western coast, excuse me.
Yes, western coast. So after they came, the land got grabbed and all the things changed and everything, because our governing of the tribes are different than the people who came to the island. So we just take how it was, and then move further and further to the mountains, which is now we are living in the beautiful mountains.
and this is, as I said in the introduction,
yes,
when Chiang Kai-shek and his people came on to...
That was a lot later, actually. So at that time, I will talk about the general things now, like the population of the indigenous people in Taiwan. Now it's about 600,000, but before my own tribe, it was more than 200,000. That's what the elderly told us. And now we only have about 5,000 people left.
Of your people?
Yeah, our Zhou people. Yeah, so it's kind of, and it's sad to know that, but that's the history. I don't want to, if you want to know about it, you can read about it because there are documents with those things. So it is very, very typical for indigenous history, I think, because there are some massacre, there are some diseases, there are something to hit the people. So now the most significant for the recent history was the 1947. It was 1947. There was 228 incident that was widely spread in Taiwan, and there are many indigenous was being massacred because they were actually they picked those people who were smart, had some success in the field and all the things. So that time, as it's the records in the history book, it says it's about 800,000 to 11,000 people dead or missing. Not until now. There is nothing really
on the record.
Concrete, because it's you really didn't know that time, because we don't dare to ask as indigenous people, and those governments at that time, I don't know, they probably just don't care about that much.
So more documentation
exactly
in the future will be needed and required to further substantiate your presence. I just want to go back a little bit, it's of the 16 tribal peoples recognized formally by the government. There are more, like 20 total.
Yes, there were more than 23.
But only 16 formally recognized.
Yes, in the history that there was a written things that there were evidence that they were there. But now there was only 16 tribes that is officially recognized by the government to get some programs and other things. So it is very, very it's in the progress. in a way. But the thing is that there are lots of things we still need to do. So,
Sure. No, I was going to just further elaborate,
Yes,
if I
yes,
may,
yes.
Bajit, of the 16 or the 23 tribes.
Yes, yes.
They're all around the island, not concentrated any particular place. And for our listeners, our viewers to know, Taiwan is an island of about almost 14,000 square miles. And within that, as you said, 600,000 indigenous peoples,
Yes.
and 16 are formally
Yes.
recognized. To what extent is that relationship
It's
with
about
the government?
It's about 2% of the total population in Taiwan. Actually, Taiwan, the first evidence they know there are people in Taiwan. It was about let's see, 20,000 to 30,000 years ago.
Time immemorial.
Yes, yes. So
Sure.
yeah, so we are old there. Indigenous people in Taiwan actually, we are called Austronesian people. We are a huge area from north to Taiwan, south to New Zealand, west to Madagascar, and east to East Island.
Wow.
That is a huge relative
Madagascar
expansion.
on the western end.
Exactly.
And Easter Island.
It is a
We're
huge
talking about
expansion.
what are the tribal peoples there in Easter Island?
It's you just said so.
Yeah, we had said that earlier.
Yes.
But we'll come back to that.
Yes, okay. It's the Taiwanese, everybody surprised when I told people that Taiwan's indigenous people, we call that Formosa before, you know that. Formosa indigenous people actually are the mothers of all the Austronesian people, because people they researched this 10 years that they prove from the language aspect, they all from Taiwan to go out to the ocean and expand all the territories of Austronesians. So I have a relative from Madagascar to East Island to New Zealand, if you basically say so, because they have our blood. We all, connect to each other, which is very good. And in language-wise, in linguistic homeland of ocean, that's been proved by scientists and all the people who search
anthropologists, etc.
Yes, anthropologists. So it's exciting to know that. I always amazed how long indigenous people in Taiwan. I mean, actually, if you put in a perspective, Taiwan is 10 times smaller than California. Put that way. It's easier to think about it. If you say square mile, nobody knows about it. So it's amazing. There are so many different people, different language, different traditional culture, and everything. This the way we think. It's all different, a little different. So it's amazing how our relatives can travel the world and just overcome all those hardships in this land and oceans. Yes, it's very mind-boggling when you really think about it.
Yeah, you refuse to be erased or disappeared as a people.
Yes. So the resistance of all this nature power and all the wisdom, it shows when you face difficulties like this, when you almost face a distinction. And the last one I have to mention, they found in Taidong, which is the east part of the island. It was they found a artifact in 4 caves, which dated 15,000 to 5,000 year old. So I always tell them we are so old in there, and it's such a great experience to know indigenous people can survive so long with all these different things. So all the things.
If I may jump forward in that regard,
Yes.
Bizits, has there ever been a declaration of a treaty or an agreement or some kind of constructive arrangement with the government other than the 16 tribal peoples that are recognized?
I know. I would say after people come to the island from Dutch, Spanish, Manchu, and Chinese nationalists, which is Chiang
Former
Kai-shek.
colonial
Yes,
special
all these
settlers.
things. Yes, I think what we really know from those things is that education actually it's more harsh than good for indigenous people at the very beginning. So it's hard. I would say, okay, the Dutch was there 1624 to 1662.
Good.
That part. And Spanish was about there a little bit shorter. It was 1626 to 1642. And there is a Chinese family called Zheng Chenggong. They were up on the island from 1662 to 1683. Yeah, so many there were six. And the Manchu was 1683 to 18. They were that long, 1895, which is Chinese. Which is Chinese. So the Japanese was there 1895
after that
to 1945.
Wow.
Yeah. So now, and the last one, and the Chinese, which is now nationalist, it's from the Chiang Kai-shek. And it was 1945 to 1988, as you know, that's the most recent changes. And now we just continues the Kuomintang and different parties. They are ruling the island. There were six main things, but the thing is, I would have to talk about what did they do for the island when they started to get there. Actually, Dutch, Spanish, and the Zheng family didn't really educate indigenous people. I mean, educated.
Just a workforce.
Yeah, just workforce.
Exploitation.
Yes, exploitation, get those fur, get those things. When the Japanese came, because they wanted Taiwan to be their territory. So they really built some roads, railways, dams. Infrastructures, and really educate not just Chinese, indigenous people speak Japanese, only speak Japanese, only do their own ritual, only do their lifestyle, everything. We wear Japanese outfit. So I still have a Japanese outfit when I was a little ridiculous, but you know.
And did you learn Japanese also along the way?
I speak Japanese until I was 6 when I have to go to Chinese school because my family, my parents, and my grandma was educated by Japanese. Obviously, they were there for a long time. So, yeah, I speak Japanese until I go to elementary school, which is another terrible thing for me because I speak my language with my grandmother, my traditional language, my Zhou. And when I go to school, I don't speak any Chinese. You know, I don't speak Chinese. And at the school, you have to speak only language. So if you speak your mother tongue, we got punished. Not just punished. Sometimes we have to have this board. It writes, I didn't speak Chinese, or I speak Zhou, something like that.
You had to carry that sign.
You have to carry a whole day if you get in the morning.
Humiliation.
It's very, very bad. And then for me, I was like, what is that?
A little girl.
Exactly. It was very, very, they put you down so much, even your language you can't speak. and we can't do our ceremony, we can't do anything. Actually, for our own traditional stuff. That's why the older people, they dare not speak our language because they are so afraid if they got into jail, because they always threaten them. If you say language like that, you're gonna,
Some trauma.
get in jail. Yeah, it's just like a systemic abusive for the tradition. It's really, as I think back, that's my own experience. I have to go to the city to have education. And these kids, they call you names, they call you savage, they call you this and that, they call all the things. And I don't even dare to talk that time when I was in mid school. Because all the school, I feel like, oh, why these people are so different? Why do they do that to me? And they think I'm stupid because before we don't test that much in the mountains, we don't have those things. So when you go to the city to join the mid school, we always have a bad scores. I mean, I was lucky enough. I study hard. I get into the, I wasn't so bad.
They're
but
writing
I still,
off an underachiever.
Right. Exactly.
A lot of the students.
Exactly.
That's on their way out.
Yeah.
They kick them out.
Yes, they started one of the good things. I wasn't. It's not luck. I worked very hard and I studied very hard to get myself not to be humiliated by all these people, all these kids, because if you're so bad, they're going to humiliate you worse. So you have to get a little better to get to the top a little bit, so they will think, oh, you're not so stupid. I got traumatized by that. I even nowadays, when I start to get to talk to people, I always feel like, oh my gosh, am I less than whatever they think or something like that? It is always there. Yeah, it's always there. So it is difficult. And now, which is good, in 1996, the government, I don't really like that established by the government, but the fact is like that. 1996, they established a council of indigenous people in Taiwan to start to try to govern our own people. It sounds good. It sounds like, okay, you have this, you do your own thing.
Yeah, if I may interject, similar here in the United States, the Bureau of Indian Affairs in extending that relationship with the indigenous peoples.
Yes.
They had a goal in mind.
Yes.
And that is economic development, extractive industries, the mining.
Yes.
And like that, very deceitful, but please go
exactly.
on.
It is like that. And since then, we realize after certain years, they really cannot do anything they want to do because you have to get allowed to do something. And then, but it was already established. There are people bought into that system who's cooperate with them.
Of those 16 recognized tribes, huh?
Exactly. And there are people like me and my friends at home, we don't agree with these things because from the education, from tradition, from all these basic things for indigenous people, they won't look into that so much that time. And then, of course, that time the Declaration of the Indigenous People was already established, right? 1996, right? It was already...
The Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, that was declared 2007.
Oh, but earlier, that's what you said was in Geneva was...
Oh, yeah, at the first International Indigenous gathering of Indians from the four directions, from the four corners of the world came together, and the outcome was a declaration of independence of indigenous nations, which is considered the precursor to today's Declaration on the Rights of Indian people.
But
for the most part.
Yes, at that time, I don't think they really emphasized those rights of indigenous people. So for a long time, I think there was a gap that they only do certain things that government want them to do, which is really sad. And from 1945, they started to educate us, the nationalists, which is Chiang Kai-shek's Kuomintang's government. That time they started to say, oh, okay, we can educate these savages. You know, we were still called savages.
No, derogatory
on paper, yes.
names,
Yeah,
racist
exactly.
names.
So but that education at the very beginning was totally colonialized. Education was just like a Japanese. You can't do none of your own things. None of your own thinking. You have to do certain things. You have to do something.
Strict Chinese curriculum.
Yes, strict. And they put a story, it's called Wu Feng. In our tribe, it was not real things, but they make it on the curriculum. The story is like this. The Wu Feng, this person called Wu Feng, is a person that is supposed to go to our village and do good deeds, like, tell us how to do things and actually whatever. But this person exists, but in our tribe's history, he's a terrible person. He cheated, he robbed, and he do lots of bad things. So we really oppose these things. But it was in the curriculum for probably 40, 50 years. How many little people like me, I will read that he's supposed to be a good person, but in our history, he's bad. And then one day, he ride a horse and get on a red cape and go to the village for peace. That's what it says in the book, for peace. But one of our Zhou people killed him. So he becomes a hero. Say,
a martyr.
Right. Oh, hero, he sacrificed because he want to educate the indigenous people. He loves the indigenous people, and the people are so bad, and this and that. See, we read all those things when we were young. How abusive is that for younger mind? I was like, oh, what? And the kids in school, they always says, oh, they're a killer. See? I mean, since we're little, that's why
it's a total orientation.
Exactly.
By the colonizer.
Exactly.
And erase whatever
everything.
Thoughts you might have had of your culture, your people, your language. It's so typical of stories of indigenous peoples throughout the world with the colonial governments. As I said earlier in the show, the pillars, enemies of indigenous peoples continue to be religions, governments, and education. It's very important. I'm hoping that the listeners, the viewers, can realize, listening to your story, and how similar. Yes, please go on.
Yes, those are the story when I was very young, and things stick in my mind is that they send those teachers to the school in the mountains, and this teacher, we don't even understand what they talk about because they all have those heavy accent from their place from China, and we don't even understand. How can you expect kids to do well if they don't understand what you talk about? So it was,
or even the difference from an urban to the rural area in the language.
They send those people because they belong to them. They probably need to find a job for them. so they send these people to the mountain to teach kids, which is I doubt their qualification. That time probably have no qualification. So the culture was like my tribe. We had 50 years without ceremony. 50 years the gap of those things. So it was a sad time.
Almost buried.
It was a sad time for our culture. It was disaster for all the tradition things. It was disaster for all these knowledges for ceremonies and things like that. So after that,
It's only in these recent contemporary times that you're reviving.
Yes, that's how we started to realize. It was about 1987. I think it was 1987. They started to make the education a little bit multi-purpose. Like it's not just Chinese, or it's not just their stuff, or whatever they want to teach us. They are more multi-purposes. They have foreign histories. They have English. They have starting to have all these things. So, but indigenous people then still not included in any sort of things, any sort of curriculum, or any sort of history things, nothing yet. So I think it was until 1998, they started to realize, okay, I think it's also from all the information for indigenous people around the world, and influence some thoughts of some people, because there are some people that come to the state to study. So
very good. Since I was talking about David So Happy case, and he was deprived of salmon, traditional foods, and went to court, and he was in jail, and due to his poor health and deprived of the salmon, he didn't live very long, much after his release from prison. But it proved a point that Indians have treaties; they need to be respected, and that includes fishing rights as well. So, coming back to the whole idea of the colonizers on your lands and everywhere indigenous peoples are, the agenda has always been the same.
Yes.
Baisit, as you know, and to this day, and today, what kind of corporate development has been going on there in that regard?
In my experience, since I was, how I know those things, anything that's valuable, they want it. From trees, from agriculture stuff, and every stones or whatever, anything that they think it's valuable, they'll take it. From the Japanese era, they do that. I mean, Dutch as well, because they want fur, the deer fur.
It's continued,
so it's the same thing. And now in Taiwan, there are about 240 mines along the central mountains, which is mind-boggling. We didn't know that until a producer and a photographer flew over Taiwan and see all these things and put it out. He got trouble. Person got trouble. And then we knew a company dig the hole next to a tribe for 60 years, and now they're still going on. The whatever, they go to court.
So now you're identifying.
Yes, now indigenous. Yes, they identify that, they taking them to the court.
I can just imagine the pollution, the contamination left and continues by those extractive industries.
Yes.
Over 200 that you mentioned.
Exactly.
And what can you tell us about the nuclear development? Are there, to what extent?
Now in Taiwan,
and how recent?
There are two different thinkings. One is pro one is against.
Same here.
Yeah, it's the same thing. But the thing is, no matter what your pro and cons, all these things are in indigenous lands. There were 4 nuclear power plants there. I mean, it is for anti-nuclear people. That is a huge,
Struggle.
Yeah. But the thing is, these people, the main point is that why do you put the nuclear waste in the indigenous land without indigenous people's consent? And when the people in the island discovered that was a nuclear waste, they got panic and said, why do you put these things? And I said, okay, we move it. They never move it because do you know why? They want to move it to another indigenous land in the mainland. Mm-hmm. So until now, they're still there doing those things. Yeah. So I don't know. It just, to me, it's incomprehensible that they think we are not humans. You can just put that there. We got sick. People got sick from those things.
Oh, sure.
And they deformed. Even plants got deformed. You know those things from other places in the world. So it is hard to say we don't want or we want because Taiwan has no resources for big electricity. Yes, there is a one burn coal, but the coal now it's prohibited because
it's going back.
Yeah, I mean, it's so bad for the environment.
Of course, the corporations want to bring fossil fuel and coal burning plants back and like that, but that will be fought back. And the question on nuclear, which is all over the world.
Exactly.
And I think the German anti-nuclear people addressed it properly and continue, and that is, what do you do with the waste?
Exactly.
And if you can't answer that properly, then it shouldn't even be happening.
Exactly. We face this.
And this is for like 100,000 years that the waste or more.
Yes.
And we're seeing now the consequences of Fukushima.
Yes.
And nuclear contamination of the ocean.
It's all over. It's not
very
only
gradual.
Japan.
Yes, it's horrible in that regard.
It's. I think we need more power to decide what they put in our land. But the thing is, in Taiwan, government think indigenous land is still their land, so they have the power to arrange it or use it when they have a big project like that. So it is difficult for indigenous people in Taiwan to really speak out and against something because...
Well, yes, you're right. However, as we mentioned earlier, the Declaration on the Rights of the World's Indigenous Peoples, there's an article of the 46 that refers to the principle of free, prior, informed consent, which to some level you can use it for leveraging to assert your rights and I think the clarion call by its worldwide is we need more court cases to refer to the Declaration on Rights of People and people to assert and declare and claim those rights to make more court case to make it more substantial and
more visible
and enforcement, which is the final turn would be the implementation of those rights, and not merely a partnership, that just kind of leaves it with the governments to agree to do it. It needs enforcement.
But the thing is, for the rights of indigenous peoples in Taiwan, I know they know those things. They read these things and they know about it. But as I observe, nothing really happening from that declaration. So I am not sure if they will do it later or anything else, but there are some things that are happening a little bit little by little. I don't know how far we'll go, but like the human rights, we can see more because there are more lawyers now from indigenous peoples. They wake from these things and they are helping to put these things forward. So they're more visible, and there are some court cases. They are winning some cases in the things. And one of things I would like to mention, just before I came to the States, the government, which is I was applaud very, very for a long time, they passed a law that the non-indigenous people cannot buy the indigenous people's land. Because from this year before, the non-indigenous people, they can use the indigenous people's name and give the person money and then use it as a, how do you call that, a name for the land, to get the land. And now you can't do that anymore.
Either. And I may add, we'll have to check real quickly. Maybe some of our viewers and listeners may look also, but the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples that we're referring to, and those 46 articles, and I mentioned even earlier, the precursor to that was the 1977 Geneva Conference of Indigenous Peoples, and it was signed, adopted by the General Assembly September 13, 2007, and there were 4 countries in the world that did not sign it at that time. That was Australia, New Zealand,
USA,
Canada, and the United States. And of those 4 countries, the United States reluctantly adopted the Declaration on the Rights of Indian People in December of 2010. However, there were also countries that abstained from that vote of the General Assembly. And Russia was among them, India, and I believe China was also one of the countries that did not sign, has not signed the Declaration on the Rights of People.
Yes,
but
and
please go ahead.
And our president, Tsai Ing-wen, she apologized, but lots of policies and all these things that we're supposed to do cannot go into the root because they don't want to do that.
Well, if I may say, just on the quick, I think it sounds like you may have an ally there. If she is president of Taiwan, acknowledging and providing that recognition and support for indigenous peoples, you may have a little leverage there to work with.
Yes, exactly.
And with China.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's very difficult because a party, they want votes. So these things, as in my opinion, it's part of the agenda they are working on it. Because before we are not really for that party. And now people, they have to get people to that party. So they make all these agendas. I doubt their sincerity. But the thing is, if you do so, I'll take it. So it's like that. So that's how it goes in Taiwan now. But the thing is, we are glad it's still in peace.
Yes.
See what I mean? Yes.
Exactly. And with that, the talking it out, of course, is better. And the indigenous people is reaching out.
Yes.
Every opportunity you can.
Yes.
To make a partnership or some agreement moving forward is the best way. And I think it's good for our viewers and our listeners to know that as indigenous peoples, and the United Nations has declared that there are well over 400 million indigenous peoples worldwide, and more getting woke or waking up to, yes, indeed, I'm indigenous, and start moving in that direction in all its beliefs and traditions, So that's going on.
Yes, I welcome that apology because we now, for me as example, I can say something publicly without fear, because before, if you say something, you are afraid that, oh, you have no protection. And now the president apologized. That means you did something wrong before. You did something not justice.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, you have to do some justice turnovers and make some adjustments. I welcome that. So it's a good progress to do that. But the thing is, we still need more time. We need more time, a long time to educate other people who really didn't know about indigenous peoples
On the island in particular.
Exactly.
Yes.
There are still many people, they don't even understand.
Yes.
The island has so many indigenous people. And they don't understand they're supposed to respect their culture, their knowledge, and they don't even want to know what's about us. Not like us, we're educated mainly to know their history, their China stuff, and whatever. And we don't study our stuff, which is sad. Yeah. But the thing is,
well, you're on the cutting edge.
Exactly.
There. You're on the cutting edge, and the struggle is long. And with you coming to the UN, making contact,
Yes.
with myself and others in the Indigenous International Movement, we provide you with that support. And for our viewers
Thank you.
and listeners to know that, yes, indeed, we have skin in the game here.
Yes.
We have indigenous peoples at the forefront in this potential conflict with Taiwan and China.
Yes.
And we have to be thoughtful and aware that there's indigenous peoples on the island too.
We need help.
Need help in
Yes.
seeking peace,
Yes.
a partnership to live and coexist. And we're coming close to the time closing.
Yes.
Baisit, but Baisit Ben Mai, I want to thank you for sharing your time here in the Bay Area.
Oh, I thank you
as
very
well.
much.
And hopefully we'll continue to see you at the United Nations.
Yes, we will.
Specifically the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. And this where 2,000-3,000 Indians from all over the world come. And your story that you shared with us is a story that needs to be told, to be worked on, and you're very much a part of the Indigenous International Movement. I want to thank you for sharing your time with us, and hopefully you'll come back. Any
will.
closing words? Closing words to the Bay Area and around the world.
Thank you very, very much to giving this opportunity to share my experience, share my stories. And I wish all the indigenous relatives that we be stronger and be wiser and ready for every different challenge for our lives, because definitely we'll face lots of things. So I wish everybody, all the relatives, look at things brightly, taking care of yourselves, and be strong. And that's all love each other. I think I always do that. And thank you very, very much, Tony.
Thank you.
This was a surprise to me. This was very surprised, really, really. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can tell my story for so many people, to let people understand my culture a little bit more.
Baisit Ben Mai, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, my relatives, this comes to a close here for both Eagle and Condor and KPFA radio across Indian land, including across Indian land on the KPFA La Onda Bajita, as well as with flashpoints, the daily reporting on KPFA. That's it. Thank you very much.
Hi, this is Buffy St. Marie. I'm here to support public access and SF Commons in San Francisco. Be sure to watch Eagle and Condor, our indigenous native show produced here in the Bay Area.